Hand recount and the new rise in coronavirus cases and deaths.
We just don't need to get much worse than this.
My exclusive one-on-one with plans to roll out a vaccine and his support for the Secretary of State, with fellow Republicans demanding he go.
President Trump's campaign claims it has evidence that dead people voted in Georgia.
This didn't just start. Channel 2 and the AJC uncovered thousands of votes by dead people 20 years ago. And an expert on Georgia politics says we have a rich history of it.
New answers straight from the governor on our rising coronavirus cases and deaths and our hand recount.
People will actually really know what happened with this election.
I'm one-on-one with what he expects from the recount and learning how the state is gearing up to roll out vaccines.
Live, local, late-breaking. This is Channel 2 Action News at 6 p.m. Coverage you can count on.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Jovita Moore.
I'm Justin Farmer, and here is the latest on Georgia's recount. Today, county election leaders went through training on how to check every ballot. And in the last half hour, Gwinnett said it'll start counting tomorrow. Fulton County saying it'll start Saturday, as will DeKalb County.
Georgia's Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, now in quarantine. His wife tested positive for coronavirus. The state insists that this will not slow down the recount. We have a team of reporters keeping you ahead of all the major developments this evening, from the secretary in quarantine to how the hand recount will happen and claims of dead people voting last week.
First, one-on-one with Governor Kemp. And today I asked him about the hand recount and what needs to happen with Georgia back in the red zone with coronavirus. Governor Kemp was touring Covington's Bridgestone golf ball facility today while touting Georgia being named again as the top state in America for business.
Today, I'm proud to announce that Site Selection magazine has once again named Georgia the #1 state for business.
Simultaneously, there's great concern about a rise here in COVID-19 cases as Georgia moves into the red zone, which means 101 cases or more per 100,000 residents.
Governor, Georgia has been labeled back into the red zone as it relates to COVID-19. Do you anticipate making any changes? What are your thoughts?
Well, I know the White House report has us moved back into the red zone, but like when you look at the rest of the country, we're 40th out of 50 states on the cases per 100,000 in population. So we're still doing very well. I had a hospital CEO call this week that they're doing fine. They have all the resources they need.
But local microbiologist Amber Schmidtke is concerned.
We're ranked 40th in the nation, I believe, right now, and we're in the red zone. So what that really tells you is just how intense disease is for the entire country right now.
The governor told me Georgians need to follow guidelines, wear those masks, and social distance. And he adds preparation is underway now for vaccine deployment in Georgia.
Some of the vaccines will have 1 dose, some will have 2, so there's a lot of logistics involved. We're talking to the hospitals and others that can be part of administering it, as well as our public health officials. But yes, they are already planning for the cold storage.
I asked the governor about Georgia having the focus of the nation on 2 fronts: our hand recount of the presidential results and our 2 January runoff elections that will determine if it's Republicans or Democrats who have a Senate majority.
So we got a new system. I think the steps that Secretary Raffensperger took to order a hand recount, audit, whatever word you want to use, is going to bring a lot more calmness to the election cycle, so people will actually really know what happened with this election. And I think after that happens, we'll see where we are.
The governor added that with Georgia's new electronic and paper ballot 2-step process for voting, he looks forward to seeing the accuracy that will be revealed in this recount.
Now to Georgia's Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, quarantining now because his wife tested positive for the coronavirus. He will still have to oversee the election recount and do so from home. Channel 2's investigative reporter Nicole Carr live at the state capitol. Nicole, now his office didn't say how many more people could have to quarantine.
They did not. They didn't get into too many details, but another elections official tells us he is going to take a test, reassuring us that there are enough contractors and staff members there to oversee this historic hand recount. the largest in U.S. history. This will be able, or you will be able to watch this from your counties, open to the public, just like the ballot counts were, full of observers from both parties and auditors. And it begins first thing tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, ending November 18th at midnight. So next Wednesday night, this should all be wrapped up. The biggest risk here, elections officials saying clearly human error, although they don't expect the numbers to shift enough to change the results here. If we fall within the same margin, you know, we're talking the 14,000 votes, President Trump could still request another recount, this one by machine. We're live from the state capitol. Nicole Carr, Channel 2 Action News.
All right, Nicole, of course, we will continue to watch what happens here. Thank you.
New this hour, we've learned the Georgia Secretary of State's office has commissioned an audit of how election equipment worked across the state. Now, this is different from the audit of election results we've reported. We're talking equipment. Channel 2 investigative reporter Mark Winne with us live on this in downtown Atlanta. Mark, the office has already found 372 possible double votes.
Now, in the 5, we reported on a deep data dive into double voting. But we have also learned that the Secretary of State's office, having learned, we're told, of concerns about whether voting machines and so on worked properly, is taking what one official says is an unprecedented step.
As we speak, we have a third-party vendor who is looking into a random sample of the voting equipment to make sure that nothing has been tampered with, that the scanners were functioning properly, and that the ballot marking devices were unharmed.
Deputy Georgia Secretary of State Jordan Fuchs says as part of the Secretary of State's thorough review of how the machinery of voting worked in Georgia, she's commissioned an audit of whether voting machines and other equipment across the state worked properly.
Any reason to believe that something could have occurred that could affect the outcome of elections?
No.
Ms. Fuchs says the private vendor conducting the audit, Pro V&V, will randomly spot check machines in a variety of counties across Georgia.
It is a random sample.
She says the random audit is part of a multi-tiered process to vet voting in Georgia in the 2020 general election.
If voters have a concern, we're going to look into it, we're going to investigate it, and we will release that information and data.
And she indicated a data dive by the Secretary of State's office, not using a private vendor, into double voting is part of that process and has turned up 372 potential double voters across the state.
Tell us what you mean by double voters.
That means that there is a record of them either voting in person twice or by absentee and then in person.
Ms. Fuchs says the Secretary of State's investigative division will interview voters in connection with all 372 cases, and they will be reviewed by the state election board, which will make a decision on what to do in each case, including whether to turn cases over to the Office of Georgia Attorney General Chris Carr for a decision on whether to prosecute.
We're looking at all possibilities and we're investigating it.
Now, we showed general voting video. We do not know the identities of the possible double voters. Now, Ms. Fuchs told me she is not aware of how the 2020 potential double voters stack up against the last presidential election because that was handled by a previous administration. Reporting live in downtown Atlanta, Mark Winne, Channel 2 Action News.
Fulton County has the most ballots to count, more than 500,000. Officials told us just about 30 minutes ago they're going to start their recount on Saturday. Channel 2's investigative reporter Justin Gray joins us live from Northeast Atlanta. Justin, you learned that this is going to take hundreds of people just in Fulton County alone.
And Jovita, as you say, we just got updated within the past 20 minutes. Fulton County says they're talking about 300 people here that are all going to be counting ballots at the Georgia World Congress Center. They tell us that work, that heavy lift, it's all going to start at 7 a.m. on Saturday.
The eyes of the state and nation are on you guys.
We sat in on the Zoom training call with the election directors of every Georgia county as they got their marching orders for how to do a statewide hand recount. This video they showed with children playing the role of poll workers shows how it will work. Teams of two counting together and separating ballots by candidate.
This process is going to be fair, open, and transparent, period.
Fulton County Commission Chairman Rob Pitts tells me Fulton County will be using space at the Georgia World Congress Center to hand count ballots.
I think the question everybody has is how in the world is this going to get done?
Well, I have no doubt that we will be successful.
Pitts says Fulton County will need 200 to 400 people working multiple shifts to count the more than 500,000 ballots cast in Georgia's most populous county.
So I'm comfortable that we will be able to do it. It's just still sinking in. It was quite a surprise when the directive came down from the Secretary of State.
While the state's deadline is November 20th to certify the votes, counties were told today on their statewide training that they need to be finished by midnight on Wednesday.
We know all eyes across the country are going to be on Fulton County watching that you get this right.
Not just across the country, I think across the world. Now, you know, we are the center of the universe. I mean, Georgia obviously is a focal point.
And of course, Fulton County, the focal point here in Georgia with the most people in the entire state, 500,000 ballots here to be counted. Chairman Pitts says it looks like at this point, the county's going to have to pay for all that. He says it looks like they're going to be paying for all those extra staff and also the rent at the Georgia World Congress Center. We're going to be following it every step of the way live in Northeast Atlanta. Justin Gray, Channel 2 Action News.
Thank you, Justin. Now, Cobb County starts its recount tomorrow morning. It's scheduled to start at 8. The county has more than 396,000 ballots to get through before Friday's deadline, next Friday. Now, let's take you to DeKalb County. Channel 2's Richard Elliott live in Stonecrest with why DeKalb says it needs another day to get ready to get it done.
Well, DeKalb's going to be counting its ballots, all 373,000 of them, in this building. It's a huge empty space right now. Not only do they have to get it ready, they got to make it safe from COVID-19. We spoke to DeKalb's public health director, Dr. Sandra Ford, as she was doing a walkthrough of the huge space the county plans to use to recount 373,000 votes.
Actually, I'm here now looking at the voter count place to make sure that we set this up as safely as possible.
Cleaning the building so 150 workers can be safe is just one of the obstacles DeKalb has to overcome before it can start its risk-limiting audit, basically recounting every ballot by hand.
This is new to us and things are changing by the moment.
The DeKalb County Board of Registration and Elections met virtually Thursday to go over how they're going to pull this off. They're splitting workers into 2 teams of 75 people each. One team will start in the morning and work through the day. The second team will start in the afternoon and end at 11 p.m. The state wanted all the counties to start counting Friday morning to beat the deadline. But DeKalb's election supervisor, Erica Hamilton, says in order to be prepared, they need to wait until Saturday morning.
And so we want to make sure everything is in place. So I do not suggest us starting at 9 a.m. I think we need to keep our start time of 7 a.m. on Saturday. That allows us to get everything in place.
Still, Hamilton thinks they can be finished well before the Wednesday night deadline.
We will go until it's finished. Our estimated complete date, we're going to say Wednesday. We hope it's before Wednesday, but we're just going to say Wednesday at this point.
And late this afternoon, the DeKalb County Elections Board did, in fact, certify the election so that they can begin that recount. We're live in South DeKalb County. Richard Elliott, Channel 2 Action News.
They died and then someone used their names to vote. The Trump campaign said that it has proof this has happened in Georgia. New at 6, Channel 2 investigates how often it happens.
Here's the cold front that moved through and gave us all that rain last night. Here's Tropical Storm Ada approaching Charleston, South Carolina. And this is the big cold front moving in Sunday. Wait till you see the drop in temperatures we can expect. Weather's coming up.
A chief deputy arrested, fired, and then banned from the college campus where he was teaching part-time.
How are we supposed to know who is going to protect and serve if we got issues like this going on?
New at 6, his experience in law enforcement that makes it even more surprising.
Closed captioning sponsored by Morgan & Morgan. Dial #law on your cell phone. #law, that's all.